Hello there, and welcome to Cosmic Slumber. Tonight we are drifting gently through the quiet, slow story of what actually happens inside the body when added sugar disappears from the diet. Not a dramatic before and after. Not a promise of instant transformation. Just a calm, honest look at how blood sugar settles, how sleep can shift, how taste slowly relearns itself, and how energy sometimes dips before it steadies. This is not medical advice, and any real dietary change is always worth discussing with a doctor first, especially for anyone managing a health condition. Think of this instead as a gentle tour through the biology of a very ordinary, very common choice, told slowly enough to carry you towards sleep. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or leave a thought below. It helps other sleepy minds find their way here, too, one quiet habit at a time. But for now, all you need to do is relax. Let your shoulders soften. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let your thoughts settle slowly, like sediment sinking through still water, as we drift through the calm science of what happens when sugar quietly steps aside. Let's begin. Added sugar is not the same thing as the sugar found naturally in fruit or dairy. When health researchers discuss the effects of reducing sugar, they are almost always referring specifically to added sugar, the sugar poured into processed foods, baked goods, sauces, and sweetened drinks, rather than the sugar naturally present in whole fruit or plain milk, which arrives bundled together with fiber, water, and other nutrients that change how the body processes it. The average person consumes far more added sugar than they consciously realize. A great deal of added sugar hides inside foods that are not obviously sweet at all, including bread, salad dressing, pasta sauce, and flavored yogurt. Because sugar is spread quietly across so many ordinary products, many people underestimate their actual intake considerably, simply because most of it never announces itself the way a candy bar or soda clearly does. Blood sugar levels typically begin to stabilize within the first few days of cutting back on added sugar. When sugary foods are removed from the diet, blood glucose no longer spikes as sharply after meals, and the corresponding dips that often follow those spikes begin to soften as well. This early stabilization is one of the more measurable, well-documented early changes that tends to occur fairly quickly once added sugar intake drops. Those blood sugar spikes and dips are part of why sugary snacks can create a temporary energy crash. After a sugar-heavy snack, blood glucose often rises quickly, prompting the body to release insulin to help bring it back down. In some cases, this response can overcorrect slightly, leaving blood sugar a little lower than before the snack, which may contribute to that familiar tired, foggy feeling sometimes noticed an hour or two after eating something very sweet. Reducing added sugar can lead to steadier energy levels throughout the day. Rather than a familiar rhythm of quick spikes followed by noticeable crashes, many people report a calmer, more consistent sense of energy once added sugar intake decreases and meals rely more on protein, fiber, and slower digesting carbohydrates instead, which tend to release glucose into the bloodstream more gradually over time. The first few days of reducing sugar can sometimes feel surprisingly uncomfortable. Some people report headaches, irritability, fatigue, or noticeable cravings during the initial adjustment period, symptoms sometimes informally described as sugar withdrawal. While the scientific picture of true physiological withdrawal from sugar specifically is still debated among researchers, the discomfort many people genuinely experience during this early window is well documented and quite common. Sugar can activate some of the same brain reward pathways involved in other pleasurable experiences. Eating something sweet triggers the release of dopamine, a neurotransmitter closely tied to feelings of pleasure and reward, in areas of the brain that also respond to a range of other enjoyable experiences. This shared reward pathway is part of why very sweet foods can feel so immediately satisfying, and why reducing them can initially feel like something is missing. Sugar cravings often become noticeably weaker after the first week or two of consistent reduction. Many people report that intense cravings for sweet foods, while strong in the first several days, tend to soften considerably after a week or two of consistently low sugar intake, as the brain's reward response gradually recalibrates to a new baseline that no longer expects such frequent, intense sweetness. Taste buds can genuinely become more sensitive to sweetness after sugar intake decreases. With less frequent exposure to very sweet foods, taste receptors appear to reset somewhat, meaning previously mild foods, such as plain yogurt or fruit, can start to taste noticeably sweeter and more satisfying than they did before, a subtle but well-documented shift many people notice within just a few weeks. A piece of fruit can taste dramatically sweeter to someone who has recently reduced their added sugar intake. Because heavily sweetened foods can effectively raise the threshold needed for something to register as pleasantly sweet, cutting back on added sugar often makes naturally sweet foods like berries, apples, or grapes taste more vivid and satisfying by comparison, sometimes surprising people who assumed their taste for sweetness had simply been fixed all along. Reducing added sugar can influence mood, though the relationship is genuinely complex. Some studies suggest that diets high in added sugar are associated with a greater likelihood of low mood over time, though researchers caution that this relationship likely runs in multiple directions at once, with mood also influencing food choices, rather than sugar alone being a simple, isolated cause of emotional changes. Sleep quality is sometimes reported as improving after reducing sugar intake, particularly in the evening. Because blood sugar fluctuations can interfere with the body's natural ability to settle into deep, restful sleep, some people notice more consistent, less interrupted sleep after cutting back on sugary evening snacks and desserts, though individual results can vary considerably depending on overall diet and lifestyle. Eating a large amount of sugar close to bedtime may make it harder to fall asleep for some people. A late sugary snack can cause a temporary spike in blood glucose and associated energy, which for some individuals may interfere with the body's natural wind-down process in the hours leading up to sleep, though the specific effect can vary quite a bit from person to person. The gut microbiome, the vast community of bacteria living in the digestive system, can shift measurably in response to changes in sugar intake. Certain types of gut bacteria appear to thrive specifically on sugar and refined carbohydrates, while other, generally considered more beneficial bacterial populations tend to flourish when the diet includes more fiber and fewer simple sugars, gradually reshaping the internal microbial balance over time. A healthier balance of gut bacteria has been associated with a wide range of broader health benefits in ongoing research. While the science connecting gut bacteria to overall health remains an active and evolving area of study, researchers have linked a more diverse, balanced gut microbiome to benefits touching digestion, immune function, and even aspects of mood, making dietary sugar reduction one of several factors that may help support a healthier internal microbial environment. Skin appearance is sometimes reported as improving gradually after reducing added sugar. Some research suggests a possible connection between high sugar intake and processes in the body linked to inflammation and collagen changes, both of which can influence skin texture and appearance over time. Individual results vary considerably, and many other factors, including genetics, hydration, and skincare habits, play a significant role as well. Excess sugar in the bloodstream can bind to proteins in a process called glycation, which may affect skin over time. This chemical process, occurring gradually with consistently high blood sugar levels, can affect collagen and elastin, two proteins important for skin's firmness and elasticity. Reducing added sugar intake may help slow this particular process somewhat, though skin aging overall involves many additional factors well beyond diet alone. Reducing added sugar can support more stable dental health over time. Sugar feeds the bacteria in the mouth responsible for producing the acids that contribute to tooth decay. Lowering sugar intake, particularly from sugary drinks consumed frequently throughout the day, can meaningfully reduce the ongoing acid exposure teeth face, supporting better long-term dental health alongside regular brushing and flossing. Sugary drinks are considered by many researchers to be one of the more significant sources of added sugar in a typical modern diet. Because liquid sugar is consumed quickly and does not carry the same sense of fullness as solid food, sweetened beverages such as soda, sweetened tea, and certain juices can contribute a surprisingly large share of daily added sugar intake without necessarily feeling like a substantial meal or snack. Reducing sugary drink consumption specifically is often highlighted by health researchers as an especially impactful place to start. Because beverages can deliver a significant amount of sugar very quickly without much accompanying fiber or nutrients, many public health recommendations specifically emphasize reducing sugar-sweetened drinks as one of the more straightforward, high-impact changes available within a broader effort to reduce overall added sugar intake. Weight changes following reduced sugar intake vary considerably between individuals. While cutting added sugar can support gradual, healthy weight management for some people, particularly when it leads to reduced overall calorie intake, the relationship between sugar specifically and weight is influenced by many other factors, including overall diet quality, activity levels, sleep, and individual metabolism, meaning results are rarely uniform or predictable from person to person. Reducing added sugar does not automatically mean reducing overall calorie intake. Some people replace sugary foods with other calorie-dense options, meaning the specific health benefits of cutting sugar can vary considerably depending on what replaces it in the diet. Researchers generally emphasize the overall pattern and quality of a diet, rather than treating any single ingredient in complete isolation from everything else being eaten. Reducing sugar intake may be associated with a lower long-term risk of certain chronic health conditions. Large-scale research has linked diets consistently high in added sugar with increased risk factors for conditions including type 2 diabetes and certain cardiovascular concerns over time. Because these studies generally observe long-term patterns across large populations, they describe associations and trends rather than guarantees for any single individual. Insulin sensitivity, a measure of how effectively the body responds to insulin, can improve gradually with sustained reduction in added sugar intake. Over time, consistently high sugar intake can contribute to reduced insulin sensitivity in some individuals, while reducing sugar, alongside other healthy dietary patterns, has been associated in research with gradual improvement in this particular metabolic marker for some people. Reducing added sugar is often just one part of a broader pattern of dietary change, rather than a completely isolated fix. Because sugar reduction frequently occurs alongside other simultaneous changes, such as eating more vegetables, more fiber, or more whole foods generally, researchers often find it genuinely difficult to isolate the specific individual effect of sugar reduction alone from the broader overall dietary pattern surrounding it. Cravings for sugar can sometimes be closely tied to stress rather than genuine hunger. Elevated stress hormones can influence appetite and specifically increase cravings for high sugar, high-fat comfort foods in some people, meaning that reducing overall stress levels, alongside dietary changes, may play a meaningful supporting role in managing sugar cravings more effectively over time. Sleep deprivation has been linked in research to increased cravings for sugary foods the following day. Insufficient sleep appears to influence hunger-regulating hormones in ways that can increase appetite generally, and cravings for quick, high-sugar energy sources specifically, creating a challenging cycle in which poor sleep and high sugar intake can each potentially reinforce the other over time. Reducing added sugar may indirectly support better sleep, which in turn can help further reduce cravings. Because sleep and sugar intake appear connected in both directions, some people find that early improvements in sleep quality following sugar reduction create a positive supporting cycle, making continued reduction somewhat easier to sustain as overall energy and appetite regulation both gradually improve together. The liver processes excess sugar differently depending on the specific type of sugar involved. Fructose, a type of sugar found in many added sweeteners, is processed primarily by the liver, and consistently high intake has been studied in relation to fat accumulation in liver tissue over time. Reducing overall added sugar intake, including fructose specifically, may help support healthier liver function for some individuals over the long term. Reducing sugar intake is sometimes associated with improved concentration and mental clarity. Because stable blood sugar levels are associated with more consistent energy delivery to the brain, some people report improved focus and reduced brain fog once frequent sugar spikes and subsequent crashes become less common throughout the day, though individual experiences understandably vary. Some people experience noticeable irritability during the first several days of reducing sugar intake. This temporary shift in mood is often attributed to a combination of blood sugar adjustment and the brain's reward system adapting to reduced dopamine stimulation from frequent sweet foods, a phase many people describe as genuinely challenging in the short term, even when it tends to ease meaningfully within a week or two. Hydration habits sometimes improve naturally alongside reduced sugar intake. As sugary beverages are replaced with water, unsweetened tea, or other lower sugar options, some people find their overall daily water intake increases somewhat as a natural side effect of simply swapping one drink for another, an incidental benefit layered on top of the primary reduction in sugar itself. Reducing added sugar can change how satisfying meals feel overall. Meals built around protein, fiber, and healthy fats tend to promote a longer-lasting sense of fullness compared to sugar-heavy foods, which are often digested quickly and can leave hunger returning sooner. Many people report feeling more genuinely satisfied after meals once sugar intake decreases and other nutrients take up more space on the plate. Consistently high sugar intake has been linked in research to increased markers of inflammation in the body. Chronic low-grade inflammation is associated with a range of long-term health concerns, and some studies suggest that reducing added sugar may help lower certain inflammatory markers over time, though researchers emphasize that inflammation is influenced by many interacting dietary and lifestyle factors beyond sugar alone. Reducing sugar intake does not require eliminating all sources of sweetness from the diet entirely. Many nutrition researchers emphasize that whole fruits, which contain natural sugars alongside fiber, water, and micronutrients, can still be enjoyed as part of a lower sugar diet, since they tend to be digested and processed by the body quite differently compared to concentrated added sugars found in processed foods. Fiber slows down how quickly sugar from food enters the bloodstream. When natural sugar is consumed alongside fiber, such as in whole fruit, the fiber slows digestion and the corresponding release of sugar into the blood, resulting in a much gentler, more gradual rise in blood glucose compared to the sharp spike typically caused by refined sugar consumed largely on its own. Reading nutrition labels can reveal surprisingly high sugar content in foods not typically thought of as sweet. Products such as bread, crackers, and certain condiments can contain meaningful amounts of added sugar, often listed under a variety of different names, including terms like cane syrup, dextrose, or maltose, making it genuinely easy to underestimate total daily sugar intake without carefully reading ingredient labels. Added sugar can appear on ingredient labels under dozens of different names. Because manufacturers can use a wide range of terms, including high fructose corn syrup, evaporated cane juice, and various syrup-based sweeteners, identifying the true total added sugar content of a packaged food sometimes requires looking beyond a single obvious ingredient name and considering the label as a whole. Reducing added sugar gradually is often considered more sustainable than eliminating it abruptly for most people. Many nutrition professionals suggest that a gradual, steady reduction tends to be easier to maintain long-term compared to sudden, complete elimination, allowing taste preferences and habits time to adjust more comfortably, rather than relying entirely on short-term willpower alone. Some people find identifying specific personal sugar triggers helpful when trying to reduce intake. Recognizing particular situations, times of day, or emotional states that consistently prompt sugar cravings can help someone plan ahead more effectively, whether through healthier alternatives, better timing of meals, or simply increased awareness of the pattern itself. Reducing added sugar can shift how the body responds to stress-related eating patterns. Because sugary foods can provide a temporary, fast-acting sense of comfort, some people find that reducing regular sugar intake requires developing alternative coping strategies for stress or difficult emotions, a psychological adjustment that can be just as significant as the physical changes happening within the body. Consistent high sugar intake over long periods has been associated in research with an increased long-term risk of certain cardiovascular concerns. Some studies suggest that diets high in added sugar may be linked to unfavorable changes in blood pressure and cholesterol markers over time, contributing to broader long-term cardiovascular risk, alongside many other interacting dietary and lifestyle factors. Reducing sugar intake can be particularly relevant for individuals managing blood sugar-related health conditions, under appropriate medical guidance. For people managing conditions such as diabetes, careful attention to sugar intake is often an important part of a broader treatment plan developed together with a healthcare provider, since individual needs and appropriate targets can vary considerably from person to person. The body's insulin response can become noticeably calmer within just a few weeks of consistently reduced sugar intake. As blood sugar spikes become less frequent and less severe, the corresponding insulin response required to manage those spikes tends to moderate as well, part of the broader metabolic recalibration that continues gradually over the following weeks and months. Reducing sugar intake may support more stable hunger cues over time. Because sugar can sometimes interfere with the body's natural hunger and fullness signaling, some people report feeling more attuned to genuine physical hunger, as opposed to cravings driven primarily by blood sugar fluctuations, once added sugar intake has been consistently reduced for a period of time. Sugar consumption patterns often develop gradually over childhood, and can be genuinely difficult habits to shift as an adult. Because taste preferences and eating habits frequently form early in life, many people find that reducing sugar as an adult involves consciously retraining long-standing patterns built up over many years, a process that tends to require patience rather than expecting immediate, effortless change. Some studies suggest sugar may have a measurable, though modest, calming effect in the very short term, which can complicate efforts to reduce it. Because sweet taste can trigger a brief dopamine-related response associated with comfort, some people turn to sugary food specifically during moments of stress or sadness, reinforcing a habitual emotional association that can make reducing sugar intake feel more challenging than a purely physical craving alone. Reducing added sugar intake can sometimes reveal previously hidden or masked cravings for other specific flavors. As the overall craving for intense sweetness fades somewhat, some people notice increased interest in other flavor profiles, including savory, bitter, or acidic foods, suggesting that heavy reliance on sugar may have been partially overshadowing a broader, more varied range of taste preferences all along. The pancreas plays a central role in managing blood sugar through the release of insulin. Each time blood sugar rises following a meal, the pancreas releases insulin to help cells absorb glucose from the bloodstream. Consistently high sugar intake places repeated demand on the system, and reducing sugar intake may help give the pancreas a somewhat lighter, steadier overall workload over time. Reducing sugar intake is sometimes described by researchers as supporting better long-term metabolic flexibility. Metabolic flexibility refers to the body's ability to switch efficiently between burning carbohydrates and fat for energy depending on availability. Diets consistently high in refined sugar may, in some studies, be associated with somewhat reduced metabolic flexibility over time, though this remains an active, evolving area of ongoing research. Some people notice a reduction in bloating or digestive discomfort after cutting back on added sugar. Because certain sugars, particularly some found in highly processed foods, can be more difficult for some people to digest comfortably, reducing intake may lead to noticeably reduced bloating or digestive discomfort for some individuals, though digestive responses to sugar vary considerably from person to person. Reducing added sugar does not automatically mean a diet becomes healthier overall, since many other nutritional factors matter as well. Nutrition researchers generally emphasize that overall dietary quality, including adequate fiber, protein, vitamins, and minerals, matters just as much as reducing any single ingredient like added sugar, meaning sugar reduction works best as part of a broader, well-rounded approach to eating rather than as an isolated fix on its own. Sugar substitutes and artificial sweeteners remain an actively debated topic among researchers studying sugar reduction. While some people use sugar substitutes as a tool to help reduce overall sugar intake, ongoing research continues to explore their broader long-term effects on appetite, gut bacteria, and metabolic health, meaning the science in this particular area is still evolving rather than fully settled. Reducing sugar intake can influence how the brain responds to food advertising and visual cues over time. Some research suggests that frequent sugar consumption may heighten the brain's response to images and cues associated with sweet food, meaning that reduced intake over time may correspondingly soften this heightened neural response somewhat, contributing further to the gradual reduction in cravings many people report experiencing. The process of adjusting to lower sugar intake typically unfolds gradually across several distinct stages rather than happening all at once. Many people describe an initial period of noticeable discomfort or craving in the first several days, followed by gradual improvement over the following 1 to 2 weeks, and then a longer period of taste and habit adjustment continuing more subtly over the following months. Reducing sugar intake alongside regular physical activity may amplify some of the associated metabolic benefits. Exercise itself improves insulin sensitivity and helps regulate blood sugar independently, meaning that combining reduced sugar intake with regular physical activity may produce more noticeable benefits for some individuals compared to focusing on dietary changes in complete isolation. Family and household eating patterns can significantly influence how easily an individual is able to reduce their own personal sugar intake. Because shared meals, household grocery choices, and social eating occasions all play a meaningful role in daily food habits, individual efforts to reduce sugar are often noticeably easier or more difficult to sustain depending on the broader eating environment and support surrounding that person. Reducing sugar intake gradually, rather than through strict, rigid rules, is often associated with better long-term adherence for many people. Overly rigid, all-or-nothing approaches to any dietary change can sometimes backfire, leading to feelings of failure after a single lapse. Many nutrition professionals instead encourage a flexible, sustainable approach focused on general overall patterns rather than perfect, unbroken consistency. The specific sensation of a sugar craving often peaks and fades within a relatively short window of time. Research on cravings generally suggests that the intensity of a craving, whether for sugar or otherwise, tends to peak within several minutes and then naturally decline afterward, meaning that a brief period of distraction or delay can sometimes be enough to let a particular craving pass without necessarily being acted upon. Reducing sugar intake can shift the emotional relationship many people have with food more broadly, beyond sugar specifically. Some people describe an increased sense of control or calm around food generally after successfully reducing sugar intake, suggesting the psychological effects of this particular dietary change can sometimes extend beyond sugar itself into a broader, more general sense of confidence around eating habits overall. Cutting sugar can influence how the body responds to caffeine as well. Because both caffeine and sugar can independently affect energy and alertness, some people notice that their response to caffeine feels somewhat different once sugar intake has been reduced, particularly if sweetened coffee or tea was previously a significant regular source of added sugar in their diet. Reducing sugar intake is sometimes accompanied by improved awareness of genuine physical hunger signals. As blood sugar becomes more stable throughout the day, some people report a clearer sense of when they are truly physically hungry, as opposed to experiencing cravings driven primarily by blood sugar fluctuations or habitual eating patterns tied to specific times of day. The relationship between sugar and dental cavities has been well established in dental research for a considerable period of time. Extensive research spanning many decades has consistently linked frequent sugar consumption, particularly sugary drinks sipped slowly over long periods, with an increased risk of dental cavities, making sugar reduction one of the more consistently supported recommendations across the broader field of dental health research. Reducing sugar intake in children has been a particular focus of public health research and recommendations in recent years. Because early dietary habits often carry forward into adulthood, many public health organizations have specifically emphasized reducing added sugar intake among children, both to support healthy dental and metabolic development and to help establish lower sugar eating patterns earlier in life. Reducing sugar intake can influence exercise performance and recovery in different ways depending on timing and context. While some athletes intentionally consume sugar strategically around intense exercise for quick energy, everyday high sugar intake unrelated to exercise has been associated in research with less favorable metabolic outcomes overall, illustrating how timing and context can meaningfully change how sugar interacts with the body. Some people experience temporary vivid or unusual dreams during the early adjustment period after reducing sugar intake. While not universally reported, and not thoroughly explained by current research, some individuals describe more vivid or unusual dreams during the first week or two of significant dietary change, possibly related to shifts in blood sugar, sleep patterns, or simply increased attention to their own body during this adjustment period. Reducing sugar intake can sometimes improve how consistently someone maintains a regular eating schedule throughout the day. Because sugar-driven energy crashes can sometimes prompt unplanned snacking between meals, Some people find that more stable blood sugar levels support a more consistent, predictable eating pattern overall, with fewer sudden, urgent cravings interrupting an otherwise steady daily rhythm. The liver stores excess glucose as a substance called glycogen for later use as needed energy. When sugar intake decreases, the body relies more heavily on these existing glycogen stores, along with fat, for steady energy throughout the day, part of the broader metabolic adjustment process that continues gradually unfolding over the first several weeks of sustained reduced sugar intake. Reducing sugar intake may support improved oral bacteria balance over time, beyond simply reducing cavity risk. Because sugar specifically feeds certain bacteria associated with tooth decay, reducing its availability may shift the overall balance of oral bacteria toward a somewhat healthier composition over time, an additional, less commonly discussed benefit alongside the more widely known reduction in cavity risk. Reducing sugar intake is often just one part of a much broader, highly individual health journey for most people. Because everybody's baseline diet, health status, genetics, and lifestyle differ so considerably, the specific timeline and degree of benefit experienced after reducing sugar intake varies significantly from person to person, making broad general patterns useful for understanding overall trends, without necessarily predicting exactly what any one individual will personally experience. Some cultures and communities have traditionally maintained diets naturally lower in added sugar for generations, offering researchers useful long-term comparison points. Studying populations with historically lower average sugar intake has provided researchers with valuable long-term comparative data regarding chronic disease rates and general health outcomes, contributing meaningfully to the broader, ongoing scientific understanding of sugar's role in long-term human health. The modern food supply has changed dramatically over the past century in terms of overall added sugar availability and consumption. Compared to earlier generations, sugar has become considerably more affordable, more widely available, and more deeply embedded throughout the modern processed food supply, contributing to a substantial overall rise in average added sugar consumption across many parts of the world over the past 100 years. Reducing sugar intake can sometimes be more challenging in social or celebratory eating contexts specifically. Because sugary foods are frequently central to celebrations, holidays, and social gatherings in many cultures, maintaining reduced sugar intake in these particular contexts often requires additional planning or flexibility compared to managing sugar intake during typical, ordinary daily meals and routines. Reducing added sugar intake gradually over several weeks tends to feel considerably less jarring than attempting a sudden, complete elimination. Many people describe a slow, deliberate reduction as more comfortable and sustainable compared to abruptly removing all sources of added sugar at once, allowing the body's blood sugar regulation and the brain's reward pathways both time to adjust more gradually and comfortably. Reducing sugar intake may be associated with improved markers of long-term cellular health in some research, though this remains a genuinely complex, evolving area of study. Some laboratory and population-level research has explored connections between consistently high sugar intake and markers associated with cellular aging processes, though researchers generally caution against overstating current findings, since this area of nutritional science continues to develop considerably. The specific experience of reducing sugar intake tends to differ noticeably between individuals who previously consumed very high amounts and those who were already consuming relatively moderate amounts beforehand. Someone accustomed to very high daily sugar intake may notice more pronounced early symptoms during initial reduction compared to someone already consuming comparatively modest amounts, reflecting the more significant relative change experienced by the former group. Reducing added sugar intake can be supported by gradually adjusting recipes at home rather than eliminating favorite foods entirely. Many home cooks find that gradually reducing the sugar called for in familiar recipes, a small amount at a time, allows taste preferences to adjust gradually without requiring favorite foods to be completely abandoned, a gentle, incremental approach many nutrition professionals encourage. Some studies suggest a connection between high sugar intake and increased hunger later in the same day, even after a substantial meal. Because sugar-heavy meals can be digested quickly and may not sustain feelings of fullness as effectively as meals higher in protein and fiber, some research suggests that high sugar intake at one meal may contribute to increased hunger and snacking later that same day. Reducing sugar intake may influence how the body regulates its internal biological clock, though this remains an actively developing area of research. Some research suggests that blood sugar fluctuations may interact with the body's circadian rhythm in subtle ways, contributing to the broader, still evolving scientific understanding of how diet and sleep-related biological cycles influence one another over time. Reducing sugar intake often prompts people to pay closer attention to food labels and ingredients more broadly, beyond sugar specifically. Many people report that the process of actively reducing added sugar naturally increases their overall awareness of ingredients and nutrition labels more generally, an incidental shift in habit that can extend well beyond sugar reduction alone into broader, more mindful eating patterns overall. The psychological sense of accomplishment associated with successfully reducing sugar intake can itself reinforce continued healthy habits over time. Beyond the direct physical effects, many people describe a meaningful sense of personal accomplishment and increased confidence after successfully sustaining reduced sugar intake for a period of time, which can, in turn, help support continued motivation for other related healthy habits going forward. Reducing sugar intake is not the same experience for everyone, and setbacks along the way are considered a normal, expected part of the process by most nutrition professionals. Many nutrition experts emphasize that occasional lapses or setbacks are a completely normal, expected part of any long-term dietary change, and do not need to be viewed as failure, but simply as one small part of a longer, gradual, ongoing process. The overall relationship between sugar and long-term health continues to be an active, evolving area of nutritional science. While a considerable body of research already links high added sugar intake to a range of long-term health considerations, scientists continue to refine and expand this understanding through ongoing research, meaning our collective understanding of sugar's role in the body will likely continue developing further in the years ahead. Reducing sugar intake can change how the body responds to hunger hormones like ghrelin over time. Ghrelin, often referred to as the body's hunger hormone, rises before meals and falls afterward under normal conditions. Diets high in added sugar have been studied in relation to disrupted hunger hormone signaling in some research, meaning that reduced sugar intake may, for some people, support a more predictable, naturally regulated hunger and fullness cycle throughout the day. Some people notice changes in how thirsty they feel after reducing sugar intake, particularly from sweetened drinks. Because sugary beverages can sometimes mask or interfere with the body's natural thirst signals, some people report a clearer, more accurate sense of thirst once sweetened drinks are replaced with water or unsweetened alternatives, an incidental shift that often accompanies broader reductions in daily added sugar intake. Reducing sugar intake may support more stable energy specifically during physically or mentally demanding parts of the day. Rather than relying on a quick sugar spike to power through a demanding task, some people find that steadier blood sugar levels, supported by meals lower in added sugar and higher in protein and fiber, provide a more even, sustained source of energy throughout genuinely demanding stretches of the day. The specific experience of a sugar craving often involves both a physical and a psychological component intertwined together. Researchers studying cravings generally describe them as involving both physiological factors, such as blood sugar fluctuations, and psychological or habitual factors, such as associating a particular time of day or activity with a sweet treat, meaning successfully managing cravings often benefits from addressing both dimensions rather than only one. Reducing sugar intake gradually allows the gut microbiome time to adjust its balance in a correspondingly gradual way as well. Because gut bacteria populations shift in response to available food sources over a period of days and weeks rather than instantly, a slower, more gradual reduction in added sugar may allow this internal microbial shift to occur more smoothly, compared to a sudden, abrupt dietary change. Some people find that reducing sugar intake naturally leads them toward cooking more meals at home. Because many packaged and restaurant foods contain higher amounts of added sugar than home-prepared meals typically do, some people find that reducing sugar intake naturally encourages more frequent home cooking, allowing for greater direct control over exactly how much sugar ends up in each individual meal. Reducing sugar intake can sometimes reveal how much of a person's previous eating pattern was driven by habit, rather than genuine hunger or enjoyment. Many people describe a period of increased self-awareness during sugar reduction, noticing patterns such as habitually reaching for something sweet at a particular time of day regardless of actual hunger, insight that can prove useful well beyond the specific context of sugar intake alone. The body's stress hormone cortisol can influence both blood sugar regulation and cravings for sweet foods. Elevated cortisol levels, often associated with chronic stress, can affect blood sugar regulation and may increase cravings for quick sources of energy, including sugary foods, in some individuals. This connection illustrates how stress management and dietary sugar intake are often more closely intertwined than they might initially appear. Reducing sugar intake may be one part of a broader set of dietary changes associated with improved long-term cardiovascular health in population-level research. Large studies following dietary patterns over many years have generally associated diets lower in added sugar and higher in whole foods with more favorable long-term cardiovascular outcomes, though as with most nutrition research, isolating any single dietary factor completely from the broader overall pattern remains genuinely difficult. Some people track their sugar intake temporarily as a way of building greater awareness before settling into more intuitive habits. Rather than tracking indefinitely, some nutrition professionals suggest a temporary period of more careful attention to ingredient labels and portion sizes, specifically to build awareness of typical sugar sources, before gradually shifting toward a more intuitive, less effortful long-term approach to eating. Reducing added sugar intake is generally considered safe for most healthy adults, though individual circumstances can vary. For most healthy adults, gradually reducing added sugar intake is not typically associated with meaningful risk, though anyone with an existing health condition, or anyone considering a significant, rapid dietary change, is generally encouraged to discuss their specific circumstances with a doctor or registered dietitian beforehand. As our journey through the quiet biology of stepping away from sugar comes to a close, perhaps the whole idea feels a little calmer now. Not a dramatic before and after, but a slow, steady unfolding, blood sugar settling gradually, taste buds slowly recalibrating, sleep quietly steadying, energy leveling out one small day at a time. We've drifted through cravings that rise and gently fade, through a pancreas working a little less hard, through a gut microbiome slowly shifting its quiet internal balance, and through a body patiently, steadily adjusting to something new. None of it happens overnight. Most of it happens exactly the way most real change happens, quietly, gradually, one ordinary day folding softly into the next. Now you can let all of that drift softly into the background. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders loosen. Let the images fade from bright detail into something softer and more distant, like a taste slowly settling into something calmer and sweeter than before. And if you enjoyed this journey, perhaps you might like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps other curious minds find their way here, too, one quiet habit at a time. And if you happen to still be awake, there will be another slow journey waiting for you on the screen, another gentle corner of the body and mind to drift into quietly. But for now, let your mind grow still, and let the day fall away. Sleep well, and good night.